All of our videos here are brought to you by the Landscape Certified Contractors Association. Due to the membership support, we're able to bring these videos to you each and every week. If you'd like to be part of our organization and help us bring these videos to you, make sure you visit www.irrigatortech.com and have a great day.
Several steps. First, make sure you have all the equipment you'll need. Your chainsaw, fuel oil mix, bar and chain oil, items needed to maintain your saw, an axe, wedges, water, a first aid kit, cell phone, and very important, a partner. It's recommended that you always have a partner with you and not work alone to help share the workload, as well as to watch out for each other and be available in the case of an emergency. One very important rule: never operate your chainsaw if you're not in good physical condition and mental health, fatigued, or under the influence of any substance which might impair vision, dexterity, or judgment. If you have any condition that might be aggravated by strenuous work, check with your doctor before operating a chainsaw. The first task is to prepare your chainsaw for use. Begin by giving it one more inspection, looking for loose, missing, or broken parts, a chain that is sharpened and adjusted properly, and a chain brake that operates properly. Fueling your chainsaw should be done on a clear and level surface, and always fuel your chainsaw in an area that will be a minimum of 10 feet from where you'll be starting the saw to avoid the chance of lingering fuel vapors from igniting. Wipe away any debris from around the fuel cap and release the cap slowly. Pressure can build up in your fuel tank, and by slowly removing the cap, you will allow this excess pressure that may exist to release gradually. Fill the tank with the proper fuel oil mix and reinstall the fuel cap. Wipe away any excess fuel that may be spilled on the chainsaw or the surface where your chainsaw is sitting. If you happen to get any fuel on your clothing, change them immediately before using your chainsaw. Every time you add fuel to your chainsaw, you must also add bar and chain lubricant to the oil reservoir. Again, clean the area around the filler cap with a rag and remove the cap. Once full, replace the cap and wipe away any oil which may have spilled. Next, inspect the area where you will actually be working. Determine what you will be cutting, whether it's a standing tree or a tree already lying on the ground, and then plan your work. Regardless whether you are felling a tree or working around downed trees, you must first look for obstacles that will help you determine the proper steps to take. If power lines are in the vicinity and near the wood you'll be working on, it's recommended that you have a professional with the proper tools and experience do the work for you. The same holds true if you'll be working near buildings, structures, or other types of personal property, such as vehicles or fences. Look for limbs and snags that may be located in the tops of trees in the area you're working in, referred to as widowmakers by professional loggers. Cutting wood with a chainsaw produces vibrations in the wood that can be just enough vibration to release a snagged limb. Disregarding this precaution and being struck by falling limbs has injured many chainsaw operators, both seriously and fatally. Also, be keenly aware of the weather. If the weather is rainy or windy conditions exist, it is advised that you postpone your work to another time. Wood becomes very slippery when wet, which can cause you to lose your footing, possibly resulting in serious injury. And wind can make it very difficult to manage the wood you are cutting, particularly when felling a tree. Other than the people who are there to assist you with your work, your partner, never allow anyone else or pets to be in or near the work area. The people working with you must always maintain a safe distance from the chainsaw and the work you are doing. Develop a set of hand signals or other gestures to communicate with each other at a safe distance from the work area. Clear the area where you will be working to allow solid footing and safe movement. Evaluate the conditions of the wood you'll be cutting and the surrounding area, and make a plan on how you will proceed with the work in the safest possible manner. Starting your chainsaw must be done in the proper fashion to help avoid the dangers that can occur in the starting process. Never start your saw by drop starting it or throw starting it. There are two methods that are acceptable for starting your saw. One by starting the saw on the ground, and the other by starting your saw in a standing position. To start your saw on the ground, use the following procedure. First, find a firm, flat area. free from any obstacles where you can maintain good balance and footing. And remember, it cannot be any closer than 10 feet from where you fueled your chainsaw. Always make certain there are no bystanders in the immediate area. Engage the chain brake and place the master control lever in the full choke or cold start position. If your chainsaw comes with a decompression valve, depress it at this time. Insert your right foot through the opening of the rear handle. With the bottom of your foot firmly placed against the wide flat portion of the handle, standing on the left side of the saw, place your left hand on the top of the forward handle, firmly grasping the handle with your fingers and thumb fully wrapped around the handle, your arm fully extended and elbow locked. Grasp the starter handle with your right hand and pull up on the rope slowly until you feel resistance. At this point, give the starter a sharp pull. At the end of this pull, slowly guide the starter rope back into the starter housing. Never release the handle and allow the rope and grip to snap back into the housing. Doing so could cause damage to the saw or injury to yourself. Continue pulling on the starter until the saw tries to start. Some people refer to the noise the saw will make as a burp. Once this has happened, it is critical that you don't pull the rope again until you have moved the control lever off choke and to the warm-up position. If you fail to do so and give the rope just one more pull with the choke on, you can flood the saw and it won't start without performing minor service. If your saw does flood, check your owner's manual for the procedure recommended to get your saw started. The saw has burped and you have placed the control lever to the warm-up position. Continue pulling on the rope. Usually only a few pulls are required at this time, and the saw should begin to run. Take the saw up and hold it in a safe manner with both hands. Then release the chain brake and accelerate the chainsaw. Accelerate the saw a few times to warm it up until the saw accelerates without hesitation. Your chainsaw is now ready to use. The proper way to turn off your chainsaw is to first engage the chain brake by rolling your left wrist forward. Then slide the control lever to the off position with the thumb of your right hand, never letting loose of the saw. Once your chainsaw has been warmed up and you shut it off, it shouldn't be necessary to choke it to restart if you are restarting relatively soon after having stopped the saw. Use the same procedures as we just discussed, but start the process with the control lever in the warm-up position rather than the choke position. The second method for starting your chainsaw is in the standing position. This can come in handy if you're in an area that doesn't have a great deal of flat, unobstructed surface for ground starting the chainsaw. The process of engaging the chain brake and operating the controls will be exactly the same as ground starting. The only difference will be the way that you hold the chainsaw in the process. Again, make sure that your area is clear, you have solid footing, and there are no bystanders nearby. With the chain brake engaged and the controls in the proper position, grasp the forward handle with your left hand, thumb and fingers wrapped around the handle. Place the rear handle between your legs with the upper portion of the rear handle braced against your right inner thigh. With your left arm extended and locked, pull briskly on the starter handle with your right hand in the same manner we discussed in ground starting. Once you've started the saw, grasp the rear handle with your right hand and begin the warm-up process. There are some basic rules that you should always follow when using your chainsaw. When moving about with your chainsaw, the engine should always be turned off and the chain brake engaged. The bar should be positioned behind you and the muffler pointed away from your body. If you have a scabbard for your bar, it's recommended that you have it installed when transporting your saw. Never walk with the bar positioned in front of you. Even with the engine off and the chain brake engaged, if you were to fall and come into contact with the chain, you could easily cut yourself on the chain. As you're working with your chainsaw, always hold the saw firmly with both hands. Never, under any circumstance, operate your chainsaw with one hand. Doing so will enhance the chances that you could become seriously or even fatally injured while using the chainsaw. Regardless of whether or not you're a right-handed person, you must always grip the front handle with your left hand. Make sure that your fingers and thumb are wrapped around the handlebar. Do not operate your saw with the thumb not fully engaging the handlebar. Your right hand will grip the rear handle and also operate the throttle trigger, throttle interlock, and the chainsaw controls. When operating your steel chainsaw, the master control lever can easily be accessed by the thumb of your right hand while still maintaining a firm grip on the rear handle with your fingers. Always be aware of your working conditions and how they can contribute to three of the most common and potentially dangerous reactive forces: kickback, push back, and pull in. Kickback occurs when the moving saw chain near the upper quadrant of the bar nose contacts a solid object or is pinched, or is incorrectly used to begin a plunge or boring cut. The greater the force of the kickback reaction, the more difficult it becomes for the operator to control the saw. The type of bar and saw chain you use is an important factor in the occurrence and force of kickback reaction. Steel recommends the use of the reduced kickback bars and low kickback chain color-coded green. Check with your authorized dealer for more details on which bars and chains are available for your chainsaw. Your chain brake is another feature that can help reduce the risk of serious or fatal injury from kickback reactions. Although the chain brake does not stop kickback from occurring, and it is not a fail-safe system, it can stop the chain quickly when activated, reducing the chances of a rotating chain coming into contact with the operator. Study carefully these 12 points that can help you avoid kickback. Hold the chainsaw firmly with both hands and maintain a secure grip at all times. Be aware of the location of the guide bar nose at all times. Never let the nose of the guide bar contact any object. Do not cut limbs with the nose of the guide bar. Be especially careful when cutting small, tough limbs, small-sized brush and saplings, which may easily catch the chain. Don't overreach. Don't cut above shoulder height. Begin cutting and continue cutting at full throttle. Cut only one log at a time. Use extreme caution when entering a previous cut. Do not attempt to plunge cut if you are not experienced with these cutting techniques. Be alert for shifting of the log or other forces that may cause the cut to close and pinch the chain. Maintain saw chain properly. Cut with a correctly sharpened, properly tensioned chain at all times. Stand to the side of the plane of the bar and chain when cutting. Pull-in occurs when the chain on the bottom of the bar is suddenly stopped. This can happen if the chain becomes pinched, caught, or if it encounters a foreign object in the wood. The reaction of the chain pulls the saw forward and may cause the operator to lose control. To avoid pull-in, always start a cut with the chain rotating at full speed and the bumper spike in contact with the wood. Sometimes pull-in can be prevented by using wedges to open the kerf or cut, particularly when making a bucking cut. Pushback occurs when the chain on the top of the bar is suddenly stopped when it's pinched, caught, or encounters a foreign object in the wood. The reaction of the chain drives the saw straight back towards the operator and may cause loss of control of the saw. To avoid pushback, always be alert to forces or situations that may cause material to pinch the top of the chain. Never cut more than one log at a time. And don't twist the saw when withdrawing the bar from a plunge cut or underbutt cut. The chain can easily pinch in this situation. When cutting wood, always make sure you have firm, solid footing and keep your back straight using your legs and knees to adjust your height. Always operate the chainsaw with the bar and chain positioned to the right of your body, never in line with your body. This will greatly decrease the chances of serious or fatal injury in the event your chainsaw experiences a reactive force event or kickback. If you're moving between cuts, always engage your chain brake prior to movement, and don't release the chain brake until you're ready to begin your next cut. This will also decrease the chances of serious injury if the saw were to become entangled in limbs or shrubbery, or if you were to accidentally drop or lose control of the saw. If you need to clear away brush or limbs as you're working, always engage the chain brake first. If you have a significant amount of brush or limbs to move, or heavy objects, it is recommended that you engage your chain brake and shut the saw off before clearing those objects. If you're starting the chainsaw in the immediate work area, regardless of the method you use, ground starting or standing starts, make sure you have a clear, unobstructed area to do so. Never try and start the saw in a confined area or in an area with projecting limbs or brush that can come into contact with the bar and chain. If you've become fatigued or out of breath, engage the chain brake, turn off the chainsaw, and take a break. And always drink lots of fluids. Do not operate your chainsaw without the proper protective apparel and clothing. If you have a partner with you, always make sure that they keep a safe distance from the area you're working in, and never allow them to hold or brace any wood that you are cutting. Never allow 2 or more chainsaws to be used at the same time in the same work area. 2 people cutting on or near the same piece of wood can change the balance of the wood, or release limbs that can cause one or both operators to become injured without warning. Never operate your chainsaw above shoulder height, and never use a ladder or any other object to stand on to increase your reach. Doing so will increase your susceptibility to dangerous reactive force situations, as well as the chances that you could lose your footing and fall, possibly landing on a running chainsaw with the chain turning, a very serious or even fatal situation. If you have limbs to cut that are above shoulder height, Steel makes specially designed saws with extended reach to perform those operations, like the one shown here. It is recommended that you use one of these products for this work, or turn the job over to a professional that has the proper training and equipment to finish the job. No matter what the job, whether it's a tree lying on the ground, partially suspended above the ground, or a standing tree, you must always evaluate the job and the dynamics of the situation before you begin cutting. As you are in the process of cutting wood, the dynamics of the tree, the weight and balance will change. For example, here we have a tree ready to be limbed and then bucked into firewood length. With the larger and heavier limbs, there could be a chance that the tree will shift its position as the weight of those limbs are taken away. Make sure that you evaluate this prior to beginning your cutting, and that you position yourself and plan your work accordingly. There are some basic rules to follow when limbing a tree on the ground. First, always begin limbing from the base of the tree, moving your way upward. Whenever possible, keep the log between you and the limb you're cutting. Make sure that you have good solid footing at all times. Never stand on the log, and never hold the saw with one hand while cutting. Always hold the saw with both hands, a firm grip, fingers and thumbs fully engaged around the handles. If the log is located on a slope, always stand on the uphill side of the log, so if it rolls away from you. If the log is supported by limbs on the underside of the tree, leave these limbs for last, as they will help support the tree during your work. Be cautious when cutting a limb from the bottom or underbucking. The limb may tend to close in the cut, resulting in a pinched chain and guide bar. If this happens, turn off the saw and remove the saw from the cut. This is a limb that is under pressure, referred to as a spring pull. These can be very dangerous, as they can spring back towards you with a great amount of force when cut. This can cause you to lose control of the chainsaw, or result in severe or fatal injury. Be very cautious when cutting spring pulls. Release the tension by making multiple shallow cuts on the outside of the arc, with you standing at the center of the arc. Now that the limbs have been removed and the area around the log is cleared, you can begin bucking the log into the desired lengths. If your log is still suspended by lower branches, your job may be easier if you begin bucking from the top of the tree, as long as you're not cutting above shoulder height or have to reach. Then begin working down toward the butt. With the tree suspended off the ground, usually the sections you cut will drop effortlessly to the ground. Notice how our chainsaw operator is using his spikes to steady the saw while he is cutting. It's also a good idea to position your body away from the uncut portion of the log. This will create a clear zone for you to move in the event the log were to shift or move. You can work like this up to the point where the tree is suspended by a lower limb. At this point, you'll need to cut the lower limb and let the tree settle to the ground. Be very cautious when doing this and predetermine which way the log will drop or roll when the bottom limbs are removed. You'll want to position yourself on the opposite side of the log's movement, and be cautious of your bar pinching in the cut, as these limbs will usually be under a considerable amount of pressure. If you are bucking a log that is laying on the ground, there are a few things you'll need to know to perform this work properly. First, remember that if you touch the ground with a moving saw chain, even if it's for a split second, this will be enough to dull your chain. Since the wood is laying on the ground, you will need to be cautious of this. Here, you see our operator making a series of cuts in the log, not quite cutting completely through in order not to hit the ground with his chain. Once he has completed this series of cuts, he will roll the log over 180 degrees and finish the cut. This technique is a good one to use when the log is laying flat on even ground. But oftentimes, the ground the log is laying on is not flat and requires a variety of cuts to properly buck the log. This log is suspended with the weight focused in the middle of the log where you want to make your cut. As you cut this log, the log will begin to drop in the middle, and your cut will begin to close up. If you don't immediately remove your bar from the cut, it will be pinched. To avoid this, first make a relief cut on the top side of the log. Then begin an underbucking cut from the bottom in such a manner that the two cuts will intersect. Done properly, you will be able to buck the log without pinching your guide bar. But this takes a lot of practice and skill and is usually best left for a professional chainsaw operator. This log is suspended, but the weight of the tree is on the ends of the log. This means if you were to buck this log, the log will tend to move upwards when cut. If this is the case, you'll do just the opposite that you did on the previous log by making your relief cut on the bottom and the finishing cut from the top. On either method, you can also use your plastic wedges to help keep the logs from closing in the final cuts. This is typical storm damage, where several damaged trees are intertwined in various positions. This work should be done by professionals only. The amount of risk and unsafe conditions that exist in multiple trees being blown down and the skill needed to work on these trees is tremendous. If you must work on storm-damaged trees, always drag the trees into the clear with a heavy vehicle such as a tractor or bulldozer before cutting them. Here is some damage around wires. Again, this work must be left up to professionals with the right equipment and training. When felling a tree, you will need to evaluate the dynamics of the tree, but there are also several other important details that must be considered before you choose your trees to fell. First, look in a 360-degree radius for any hazards or property that could be struck by the tree you're falling. If any of these are within reach of the tree, regardless of the direction in which you think the tree will fall, it is highly advised that you call in a professional with the proper training and equipment to fell the tree. Check the weather conditions. If it is a windy day, the top of the tree acts just like a sail and can adversely affect the way the tree will fall in relation to the way you want it to fall. If this is the case, it is advisable that you fell the tree when conditions are more favorable or call in a professional to finish the job. Look for other trees and shrubbery in the immediate area and how they will be affected when your tree falls. Also, look for snags or loose hanging branches in the tree and surrounding trees. The vibrations and harmonics in the tree created by the cutting action of the chainsaw or the forces caused by windy conditions can be just enough to dislodge the branches where they can fall straight down onto the saw operator, a dangerous hazard that can result in serious injury or even death. Now that you've chosen the tree you will fell and the surrounding area is suitable for the job, let's look at the fundamentals for felling the tree. You must first determine the direction the tree will fall. To do so, take into account these basics. The lean of the tree, which may indicate the direction the tree will most easily fall. Also, look at the branches of the tree and determine if there are a greater proportion of limbs or heavier limbs on one side of the tree than the other. The displacement of weight by the limbs can also have a factor on the direction the tree would most naturally fall, even if a slight lean to a tree is in the opposite direction. This is a critical choice that you have to make, and if you are uncertain at all, it is highly advised that you either move to another tree to fall or that you call in a professional to complete the work. You will also want to take into account other trees or shrubbery in the area that could affect the tree's fall or that could be damaged by the tree's fall. Once you've determined the direction that you will fall the tree, clear the area around the base of the tree so you have an unobstructed zone to work in. You'll also need to determine paths of retreat for yourself once the tree begins to fall, or in case of an emergency. The paths of retreat should be at a 45-degree angle on both sides of the tree, opposite the felling direction. Make certain that the entire paths of retreat are clear and unobstructed. Anyone working with you in the area should remain at a distance no closer than 2.5 times the length of the tree to be fallen. And remember, never let bystanders or pets in or around the area you're working in. Your partner can be a great help in this regard to make sure no one enters into the work zone. To fell a tree properly, you should also have a set of plastic felling wedges and an axe similar to these. The wedges should be made of a plastic component as not to harm the cutters of the moving chain when used to wedge the tree. Steel or metal wedges can quickly dull a chain and cause a very dangerous condition in the felling process. Your axe will be used to dislodge any loose bark in the area of your cut, as well as the tool you will use to force the wedges into the felling cut. There are two popular felling techniques most commonly used today: the standard or common notch and the open face technique. Your owner's manual will describe various techniques for making felling cuts. In this video, we will show you the basic techniques using a bar that is suitable for the size of tree we are falling. If the tree you will be falling is larger in diameter than the usable bar length of your chainsaw, you will need to utilize special techniques to safely fell the tree. In this case, if you're not a trained professional, it is highly advised that you leave these larger trees to a professional with the right equipment and training. Let's begin by looking at how the standard or common notch technique works. The notch that you cut in the tree will consist of one cut that is horizontal, level with the ground, and a second cut that is at a 45-degree angle. These two cuts will intersect with each other, creating the felling notch. The side of the tree that you create the notch in will be the same side that you want the tree to fall. Here you can use your felling sights to help you properly position the notch and the hinge that will help control the felling of the tree. Pointing your felling sight at the location you want the tree to fall will give you the 90-degree angle that you will want for a properly placed notch. As you cut, always watch for weakness or rot in the tree. If the tree is weak or rotted, it is advisable that you have a trained professional remove the tree. Make your 45-degree cut first with a depth into the tree approximately 1/5 to 1/4 of the tree trunk's diameter. Next, make your horizontal cut, intersecting with the 45-degree cut, creating a wedge that can be removed from the tree. It is extremely important that these two cuts meet exactly, so take your time making certain that you get it right. You'll now move to the rear of the tree and begin the felling cut. If there's any loose bark on the backside of the tree, use your axe to dislodge the bark around the area that you will be making your felling cut. This cut will be horizontal and should be 1 to 2 inches higher than the horizontal cut of the felling notch made earlier. Always stay to the side of the tree when making your felling cut. Never work from directly behind the tree, as the tree could split and come backwards with deadly force, an event called barber chairing. As you begin to make the felling cut, add your plastic wedges to the back of the cut. These will keep the tree from settling back in the cut and pinching your guide bar, and they will also be instrumental in felling the tree, particularly if there is insignificant lean in the tree towards the desired felling direction. The hinge you create when done properly will leave approximately 1/10 the diameter of the tree uncut. Never cut into the hinge. Doing so could cause you to lose control of the direction of the fall. Once you have correctly made your hinge with the felling cut, and if the tree has sufficient lean, it will begin its fall to the ground. When you see the tree begin to fall, immediately remove the saw from the cut, turn it off with the chain brake engaged, and withdraw from the cutting area using one of your pre-planned escape routes. Never remain near the tree during its fall. If you have finished making your back cut, but the tree is not falling, you will use your wedges to complete the task. One hit at a time, drive the wedges further into the felling cut, waiting a few moments for the tree to absorb the dynamics of the wedging process. Continue the process until you see the tree begin to make its fall. Again, retreat to a safe distance while the tree falls. If for any reason the tree still won't fall after properly wedging it, do not attempt to make additional cuts with your chainsaw. This could result in serious or fatal injury. Bring the tree down with a cable winch, block and tackle, or heavy equipment such as a tractor or bulldozer. The second type of felling cut is the open face cut used by many of today's professionals. Unlike the standard or common technique, the open face uses an angled bottom cut that allows the tree to utilize the hinge throughout the fall all the way to the ground, giving you more control of the felling process. Again, you'll use the felling sights to direct the tree's fall in the desired direction. Make your first cut down at approximately a 50-degree angle to a depth of approximately 1/5 to 1/4 of the trunk diameter. Make the second cut from below at approximately a 40-degree angle. These cuts must match exactly and will result in a 90-degree wedge removed from the tree. When you make your back cut or felling cut, it should be horizontal and 1 to 2 inches above the apex of the open face cut, or above where the two cuts on the open face meet, creating the proper hinge. Again, using your wedges just as you did with the standard or common technique to fall the tree. You have now gone through the basics of how to maintain and operate your chainsaw in a safe manner. But there is still one thing left to cover, and that's how to store your chainsaw when your work is done. Once you've finished your work, you should always loosen your chain. A chain can tighten as it cools down, possibly causing serious damage to the crankshaft and bearings when stored. It's also a good idea to coat your bar and chain with a corrosion-inhibiting oil if it will be sitting unused for any length of time. If you'll be storing your saw for a period of 3 months or longer before you intend to use it again, you should drain the fuel tank and run the engine until the carburetor is dry, or when the saw quits running. This will help prevent the parts in your carburetor from sticking or becoming inoperable. And always store your chainsaw in a dry, high, or locked location outside the reach of children or any other unauthorized person. We hope that this program will help make your chainsaw cutting experience a safer and more enjoyable one. For further information about your Stihl chainsaw, see your authorized Stihl dealer.
All right, we're gonna take a 15-minute break, use the restroom, come back and finish up with Brandon, and he's got some questions he's gonna ask you guys. So there's some drinks as well and more coffee if you guys want to have some of that cold.